Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn,
And I'm Sarah Callan.
and today we are going to be reviewing the film The Voice of Hind Rajab. This is part of our Oscars prep, and this is a film that I'm so excited that we got to watch because of the Oscar season and just getting to discover and experience this film. So very excited to talk about this movie. Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for this film?
Red Crescent volunteers receive an emergency call. A 6-year-old girl is trapped in a car under IDF fire in Gaza, pleading for rescue. While trying to keep her on the line, they do everything they can to get an ambulance to her.
All right. So, gosh, this is quite a film. If that premise alone does not clue you in on it, prepare yourselves. I think just this is a lot. So, one sentence summary for The Voice of Hind Rajab. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is a look at some of the bravest helpers in our world today.
So good. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. My one sentence summary is the call for empathy will never be dropped.
This is really good. I love it.
It came at the 11th hour, and I was like, yes, that's the one.
Yes.
Okay, well, there's much to talk about with this film. Before we really dive in and share our thoughts about this film, I think it's important to just give a content warning. This film, especially as you heard from the premise and the summary, covers a lot of very sensitive and very emotional subject matter. And so we just want you all to take care of yourselves in the way that is best for you. Your sanity, your mental health, your well being is most important. So this is your content warning. This film definitely covers some very emotional topics that are, I think, still incredibly, incredibly timely. So this is the content warning that we wanted to give in advance. And with that, Sarah, yeah, I'm curious to hear how this film landed with you, and yeah, what your thoughts are about The Voice of Hind Rajab at a high level. We won't spoil this movie quite yet around where the film takes you. So, at a high level, what did you think of this film?
Yeah. Like you said, it's a very difficult film to watch, but I think it's a really important film to watch. And I think in my book, this is one of the most important films of 2025. Just
Yeah.
shining light on stories that I feel like we're inundated with these days, but really taking us into and humanizing some of these stories that are easy to mistake as just like a headline. So it's a difficult watch, but I think it's very well worth it, and I'm really glad that it was nominated for an Oscar. Otherwise, honestly, I probably wouldn't have seen it, or it would have been maybe like years until I finally watched this. So just another one of those examples of like the Oscars using its powers for good. Um, in addition to it being a really important and timely film, it's also just really well made. And I'm excited to get into some of the specifics around, like the cinematography and the use of space and how that creates tension, even though it's just happening in this one building, primarily this one room, and the way that we get to see all of these different reactions, all these human reactions in this really incredibly tense and heartbreaking situation. So
Yeah.
there's so much depth here. There's so much craft from a filmmaking perspective. This really worked for me, and it also just absolutely destroyed me. So 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that, like you mentioned, I think you said it really well. This is a difficult watch, but an incredibly important one. One of the things that I think is so striking about this film is the way that it blends documentary and narrative together. And there's something that is so powerful about the way that this film allows the intensity and the real stakes of the moment to breathe almost even more fully because it is filmed and shot in this narrative form versus but it is inspired from a lot of these very real life phone calls and recording files. And so we're grounded in reality, but we also are able to allow the emotions to breathe. And of all of the ways that they could have shared the realities of these events and brought it to the world, I just think it's such a strategic choice and an incredibly artistic choice to do it in this way, which I think is really fascinating. It reminds me a lot of a short film that we both adored this year, The Singers, which also blends documentary and narrative art together. And the voice of Hind Rajab really allows the narrative pieces to actually make the real life documentary aspects of this shine even greater and kind of allow us as the viewers to experience them more fully than if it was presented to us in another narrative form. And so I thought that specific like choice in the artistic process to even lead to this film is so interesting.
And I don't know about you for you, but for me, the incorporation of the real life audio enhanced the experience, and the way
Mm,
that the film kind of throughout reminds you that this actually happened. And to me, those came at the right times and really helped put an emphasis on what the film is trying to say, as opposed to feeling like kind of gimmicky. So I
mhm,
think even within the premise, the creative choices really help emphasize the film's strengths rather than
mm.
kind of becoming a weakness or kind of almost feeling cheesy. I feel like there's a less elegant way that it could have been done, and it could feel like really gimmicky, but that's not this film at all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's maybe give a spoiler alert so that we can dive into some of those choices and creative execution choices that really allow the concept to come to fruition. So, if you haven't seen The Voice of Hind Rajab, it is available on YouTube, all the streaming platforms, Amazon Prime, I think Prime Video, a lot of places streaming on demand to rent or purchase. And so, we recommend checking out this film and listening to the rest of our conversation. As we mentioned, this is an incredibly important film, and so yeah, this is a incredibly worthy experience. So okay, so I think one of the creative choices that found so striking is that maybe helped lean away from this feeling like a gimmicky premise is the fact that we have very little score throughout basically the entire film. The score is pretty much absent until the last 10 minutes. And the score is actually used to bring us to these imaginative spaces that this team is trying to help this young girl also escape to by the sea and smelling the flower. Like the score is actually used to transport us. And for the most of the film, the meat of the film, we are just in real time with this crew, with this team, experiencing this moment to moment with no dramatization that the score is adding because the events themselves are already more than enough for us to experience the stakes. And I thought that was so notable.
Yeah, another really creative choice that I appreciated is the times when like the shaky cam would come into play. There's one moment in particular where Rana is having the conversation with Hind Rajab, and something happens with Hind on the phone, and Rana is still seated. She hasn't moved. And yet that's when the shaky cam comes in. So we're hearing the audio of Hind is
Mm.
in danger and something is happening. And then we're seeing that the camera is moving to kind of like help us feel and see that danger, even though what is on the screen is just Rana sitting talking on the phone. So I loved those moments when the cinematography is able to come in and create a sense of movement or danger or things like that, even though we're just watching people in this room. I thought that that was really effective.
Yeah, and that shaky cam also allows us to almost inhabit that POV from someone else in the room in the call center with them and feel like if we were having to film this, our hands would be shaking too. Like our view, our sight would also be kind of thrown off kilter by all of the new news that's happening. And so the anxiety of the moment is able to be expressed by the shaky cam as if we were inhabiting that headspace, that position, that view, watching our comrades, our fellow team members reacting to these moments. Yeah, so good.
And you feel that like sense of camaraderie too with all of our characters, that we get
Yeah.
to see them interacting, helping each other, sometimes hindering each other. We see the clashes of personalities, but we see, you know, they really are a team, and just seeing how they're working together and how there's so much care that they have for one another as they are working in just unbelievably difficult circumstances. I love that this isn't just like focused on like one call operator, but we get to
Mhm.
see how this entire team is working together and trying to navigate this situation as best they can.
Yeah, yeah. I loved that part of this because when one of the team members is feeling understandably like the weight, the burden of the impossibility of the emotions that they're experiencing, you can see the other characters step in and be able to take it's almost they're passing the baton. And when that becomes so overwhelming, they're able to pass the baton again. So that at any given moment, there's someone that maybe has reached a some semblance of peace and stability for what they can to come and talk to Hanud. And I also thought it was so notable too how much they're having to coax each other to be calm so that she on the other end is calm. And they kept saying time and time again, like, you need to calm yourself down because you're gonna trigger her, you're gonna trigger her. And so that stakes, I think, is constantly being reminded for us as well. If it's not just having this person figure out how to calm down amidst of an impossible situation, but it's so that they can effectively do their job and keep this girl calm so that they can keep her safe, so she doesn't make noise, that she doesn't tip off her location. And I thought that constant reminder throughout from all of the other team members for whoever's on the phone. Gosh, what an impossible task.
I was really impressed that the character of Rana, she is like she's like a supervisory level, like Omar reports to her.
Yeah,
And she hasn't been hardened by this. Like there's points where she is just like openly weeping while
yeah.
talking to this poor girl. And so I loved that because that feels so human and also so remarkable that you can take these kind of calls day after day and not become numb to them. And so I love that character choice for Rana, and just wow. What an incredible testament to who I am assuming the real life person is too, who was able to have so much emotion and have so much empathy in this incredibly difficult moment, in this difficult call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how much they're having to manage the the empathy that's overflowing within them to effectively handle the situation. Because I think the contrast is that you we see Omar, who's notably probably newer to this job and hasn't experienced this as much before. We get to see the framing device of the first call that he makes, where he experiences it for the first time, and it truly rattles him. And we see him kind of fly off the handle so much more because presumably, as any normal average person with a heart in the situation would, like, that is the truest human response. And she is somehow feeling all of that and having to reel it in so that she can do her job effectively. And it's notable that Omar is the one that takes the call initially, but as the situation becomes more intense and his emotions are obviously flowing and outpouring so much more freely, like, she actually needs to step in because he we see that it's exploding out of him. And that is the proper response. And yet these humans are having to be in truly an impossible situation to feel so deeply and yet still show up. And we see the other woman who is able to hold that in. She's probably the most seasoned out of them all, and is able to bring the sense of calm, especially in the ending third of the film. That I'm like, I don't know how this woman is doing this, but it is so necessary for the moment that they're in.
And I love the contrast of all those personalities too, you know,
Yeah.
because Omar is just flying off the handle, causing chaos, like
Yeah.
writing on the whiteboard, like just absolute madness. And then, you know, Rana just kind of like imploding in her emotion almost. And
Yeah.
then there's Nisreen
Internally.
who's just like steady, calm, even though you can feel all of the emotions that she's feeling and she's not hiding it, but she has this like calm presence about her even in the midst of that. I loved the variation between all of these characters because they're all in this awful situation together. And yet all three of them have a completely different response. And that also makes for a more interesting film too, because we're seeing
Yeah.
the clashes in personality, and also the way that you know the different personalities are pushing one another in how they respond in this moment. So I thought that that collection of people in this helps to make for a more interesting story because you don't know what's going to happen next and you don't know how they're going to respond, and that's part of what makes it interesting to keep watching.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And the fourth member of their crew, I think, is one of the most interesting parts of this film. Like, this, the character of Madi is the one that takes this film from being like an experiential, visceral experience to a widening of the lens of the impossible ethical, moral dilemmas that people in these situations are having to make moment to moment to moment, and how it is incredibly gray and vague and difficult to weigh human lives and assess risk and assess danger properly and make those really impossible judgment calls at a time like this, and deal with also the bureaucracy and the policies in place to allow the proper, like, at a macro level, the system to respond in the best way it can for everyone versus operating at like a micro human to human level. And I think that that complicates and deepens this film so much more, because of course we as the viewers are also rooting for this team to save this one young girl, right? Like, that is clear, point blank, period. But Madi has a difficult job of having to, one, figure out what his responsibilities are to the system and following the rules that he has signed up for and honoring that well and trusting that that is working as it should be, may or may not be. But then two, like, the pressure he feels from this team constantly to like make the call, just call someone, just tell them to go in. Like, how could you not save this girl? And he's being accused of so much as well, of turning his heart away and to not empathize. And you see that he breaks down at the end. Like, he feels every bit of this. And I find that his job is probably the hardest out of everyone here to say no, and time again, over and over again, because he's put his trust in the system to hopefully be doing what it's supposed to be doing. And if you have every individual operating out of their whims and their natural empathies, like, how does that incorporate more chaos for the system that actually like breaks down our ability to operate effectively and respond in times of crisis well? And so I think his inclusion and the like heavy emphasis of the conflict with him and the rest of the team really adds so much more to contemplate with this film around the moral ethical dilemmas of responding in times of crisis, which I really think adds so much to this movie.
And I love that the film spends so much time on him too, that we
Yeah.
know that he's not just like a bureaucrat. He doesn't like this system either. Like he wishes that
Yeah.
we could just do it Omar's way, but he knows that they can't do it that way. And so I like that little aside that he has with Omar. And he's like, these are the rescuers who have died. And I don't
Yeah.
want anyone else on here. And so I love those little moments in this film to really humanize all of the members of our team and help us understand why they're doing what they're doing. I also think that Madi is a really great device from like a storytelling perspective, because there's that one moment when he's like explaining how things work, and he's on the whiteboard talking about like what the whole process is and everybody that he has to talk about, and this is what the bureaucracy is, so that we as the viewers understand what they're up against and why this system is in place and all the hoops that they have to jump through just to try to rescue this one girl. And
Yeah.
so from a character perspective, he adds so much to the story and is so interesting. But then I also think as like he helps bring us viewers into his world and helps explain things that we might not understand. So I loved that character. I felt for all of them, but I especially felt for him. I was like, oh my guy, I want to give you a
Yeah.
hug and then like go take a nap somewhere. Like you need a
Yeah.
snack and to go to sleep. Ugh,
He
it's
has
so hard.
the he has the uh most painful job, I think, in this whole
Yes.
team,
Yeah.
to feel the weight of both. Like he empathizes truly with all sides and has to say like, I know, I hear you, I see you yelling at me in front of me, but like there's a wisdom that he has to continue to double down on like, we have to do it this way because there's the safety of the other crew, which I think is also very notable in how this film is presented in this narrative fashion, which is that obviously our empathy is channeled all for this young girl, but we don't get to hear the voices and learn the stories of the rescue crew that is would also be in danger, and like we only get a glimpse of that through Mahdi because he can see that and he's obviously showing that photo. But there's like an awareness I had while watching this film of like, I am also rooting for this young girl because that's where I've spent the time in this film. In this situation, that's where I've heard her voice, I've seen her photos. And I love at the end of the film that the film shows us the other two men who lost their lives on this mission. And like, it's like, oh, yeah, like no, the lens has now widened beyond just this one scoped micro situation, but like has truly widened to like, gosh, there is so much more human life on the line than just what I have seen in the time that I've only spent in this 2 hour film with obviously the people that I've rooted for.
And I think that's what like the best stories are able to do. Like
Yeah.
it's narrow and it takes you into this one story and you are invested in these characters, but that one story is also, multiplied out. It's all of these people who are also in the story as well. And so it's a very grounded, narrow in scope story, and yet it is also indicative of what so many people are going through right now. And I think it's a hard film to watch the entire duration, but that
Mm,
exclamation point of these are the other people who also lost their lives, and that knowledge that this girl and these rescuers, they're not the only ones. I think that's really what is haunting after leaving this film, and is a brilliant way to end it.
mhm, mhm, absolutely, yeah. And one thing in the ending that I was really impressed by with the film is just its continued like graceful restraint of melodrama. Obviously, this is uh an incredibly emotional situation in every front, and I think the film knows and understands that, and so it doesn't need to give us more. So I love that like we hear the outcome of what happens to Hanud, and the last thing we hear is actually her mother saying like, mommy loves you, like Miley loves you so much, and then it just fades to black. And I thought that was so honoring and respectful for the situation, for the families too, to not show more, to not allow us to hear more, but just actually the last thing that we hang on to is a mother's love. That is like the most pure thing ever, and like that is what was most beautiful about what is like an impossibly tragic situation. And I thought that was so like tastefully and gracefully and so respectfully done. And I really just hats off to the film, because I'm sure there's a slew of material they could have leaned into, and they chose that to be the moment. The crux of what this was all building towards was Hanood's mother telling her how much she just loves her so much in the final moments. Wow, that's actually more emotional than for us to hear anything. And yeah, I loved that.
And the fact that they didn't cast anyone to play Hanood. Like, we just hear the
Yes.
audio recordings and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And so, again, so honoring to the family. So, like, stewarding this story really, really well. And I need all filmmakers and studios
Yes.
to take note of, like, if you are going to tell someone's story, you need to do it in an honoring way. And the voice of Hind Rajab does exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's also really well done from a pacing perspective. Once again, we're gonna praise the like execution and technical pieces of this film to bring this like story that shines so brightly to life. But I love that we don't see photos of Hanood until quite late in the film. And I think that one does an incredible job of building like pace and tension for what the moment that's happening. But I think it also allows us to like sit in the shoes of this team too, to just hear a voice. And they have no other reference. And like that voice alone, they are so on board for. They feel that human connection without even need to see what she looks like. These adorable, adorable photos of her. Like they don't, none of that was needed for them to be like, we must save this girl. And I think for us as the viewers too, it changes the scenario almost like at the right time in the film, where my mind was like wandering and envisioning everything. And then to see her face, everything after that, you can imagine her voice on the phone, like with her face, her terrified look in her eyes, like on the phone, crouched somewhere and it's dark. And like we can envision that so much more. But I love that the film doesn't allow us all of the pieces of the puzzle to envision that until quite late in the film. So we're just left kind of reeling, and we're able to empathize with the call center team because they don't have that information yet either. So I thought that was really smart to hold that visual until, honestly, I think it's like halfway through the film before we even see the photos come in from the other team members.
And I think that this film, I mean, obviously this is what happened. It's based on true events, but this film really capitalizes on the fact that sometimes just hearing something is more horrifying than seeing it.
Yeah.
And like you said, like our imaginations can just kind of run wild as we are just listening to, you know, her pleading voice. And then when obviously you hear like gunshots and things in the background, like our imaginations can take those sounds and just run with it, and we don't need to see what's going on. And the fact that it's just audio and then the visual is people reacting to the audio,
Mm,
that creates so much horror and terror within us. Just and we as the audience also feel that helplessness that these people in this call center, you know, 50 miles away are feeling. And so I
yeah.
just thought that that was, again, a really effective use of the audio recordings to help create and emphasize tension rather than feeling like a cheap trick, basically. So
Yeah.
ugh, it's so good.
It's so good. And we get the audio experience, but I also really love the full shots of the recording files and the audio waves bouncing and moving as she's speaking. And they don't use that very often, but it's kind of just like littered throughout here and there. And what it does is it feels like a visual representation of the presence of another human. We can hear it, but like to see her little waves when she's like whimpering and they're smaller, and then when she's speaking they're larger. It's just like you can feel the presence of a human on the other side, and in a visual way for the viewers that like maybe something about that, like almost like a heartbeat or something that you see on a monitor. It's like a presence of life that's happening, that's personified in a visual way. That those are cut in there at just the right moments too, for us to feel like, no, there's a girl, there's a real human on the other side, that we're talking to. Yeah.
Yep. And we want to rescue her just like this whole team does too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You alluded to this earlier, but the way that we cut in and out and kind of weave together the real world recordings and the call center team that were on the call, and then it kind of like blends and like fades into the actors that are playing those roles and their voices. I thought that was so like elegantly done. It's only used probably like two or three times, but there's this like split image too, where we see the recording, where we hear the real person from the call center talking, but it's the face of the actor who's playing that character, and just like kind of helping us make those emotional and mental leaps. I thought that was so well done. But tell me your thoughts about that, because it was tastefully done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I I think for me a lot of times like a based on a true story movies don't work super well for me. Like
Mm,
I think sometimes they feel melodramatic or I'm like why am I watching this story about this person?
mm,
I don't need this. Um, but I think in this film, that blending and that constant reminder that these were real people who took the call, I think was just it was a helpful reminder of the reality of the situation. This isn't just a story that somebody made up, but this is something that
mm.
actually happened to a real life 6-year-old who called in the center, who real life people took the call and tried to do everything they could to save her. And they were unable to do so. Like I loved that constant reminder. And I think it's also just a way to honor their attempt and their
Yeah.
work too. Like they weren't successful and yet they tried, and that is beautiful and valuable in and of itself. So I think I don't know, it really really worked for me and just helped me feel like the stakes of it all and the real life stakes of it, not just the movie stakes, which there's plenty of
Yeah.
those, but I love that grounding of no, this actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another thing that choice specifically creatively does is it allows us to understand that everything that we're seeing the actors saying are actually things that were said to the young girl. Because I feel like there's an emotional leap we make knowing that these are the recordings of Hanud, and that is like we know for sure. But I think the instilling of the confidence of no, the everything that you see these actors saying are also the things and the ways that they treated her too, is the other side of the equation that also is grounded in reality. So it's not just, oh, we've cut together some of her calls and her voice in with this dramatization on what's happening on the other end and how they're speaking to her. It's like, no, actually, all of it is so grounded. And um, I think without that, like the slow fade of the voices together, there's just more unknown around how much is happening in the call center really happened. Um, and so the full equation being true and grounded, I think, is what is successfully accomplished by that that creative choice to showcase how the way they treated her, the way they spoke to her, the tenderness with which they spoke to her, all of that was just as real too. And I think that was also really neat to see.
And also just a really cool effect, like
Yeah.
I this is obviously like a very heartfelt, very emotional film, but it's also really well made and those little, technical things that they do, I think this was nominated for Best International Feature. So, and it was absolutely deserved because this is
Hmm.
a very, very well made film. And all those little touches are just those like moments of brilliance that you experience throughout.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that the way that ironically, like this film, it feels strange to say, but the way that it uses the traditional forms in film to create tension and stakes really does work for this film, because I think we can know it, but then the film really allows us to feel it. So the use of the passage of time of Omar writing on the whiteboard with the white on the glass with a whiteboard marker of like, it would have taken 8 minutes. It has now been 60 minutes. Now it's been 120 minutes. Now it's been 150 minutes. Like, I think that was a really great, like, pressurizing force for us to feel what they're feeling, that is used in like ever great action sequence. Go listen to our frame by frame of an Indiana Jones in the boulder scene of like that feeling of time passing and crunching on the characters to do what they need to do. Similarly, later on, they use this again, which when they say like it's getting dark, so we still might have some time. It's like, oh my gosh, just the natural forces of like the day passing and the possibility of like, is this girl without water and without food gonna have to survive in the dark overnight? Like, that is now another introduced set of stakes and time pressure that allows me as a viewer to experience what I'm sure they're experiencing too. And it's used effectively, and it's used in like some of the most whimsical action sequences and thriller scenes in films, but it actually is used to create greater empathy with the call center team, to use these feelings of time passing and the limitation, the window of opportunity closing, to help us understand what they might be feeling too. And I thought that was just like so smartly constructed as well.
And I think also helping us understand the fatigue that has set into the
Yeah.
entire team. You know,
Yeah.
this is not like a
It's true.
30-minute experience. This is hours and hours and hours on the phone with this girl. And it makes sense why
Yeah.
they are all so at the end of their rope by the end of this film, because for
Yeah.
hours they have been working on this and trying to find a solution. And the number of times also that they think that maybe she has died, I think also come at the right times and show that emotional toll that it is taking on these characters as they are just trying to help and trying to save her. So I think that passage of time for me, I think, was really helpful to be like, oh my gosh, how exhausted must they
Mm,
be after just doing this for just
hours.
many, many hours. Oof.
Yeah. And waiting and waiting. And the exclamation point on that is we've felt that already for the 2 hour, 3 hour experience. And then in the text on screen at the end, which usually I hate that in films, but it actually does work quite well in this film, um, to know that they had to wait 12 days to find out if their two friends that were on the rescue team and the young girl or safe or not safe, and just the sitting in the that unknown for 12 days. I'm like, oh my gosh, multiply the stress of like this 3 hour experience that I have felt in a small microcosm of what they must have felt, and then to multiply that to 12 days before hearing the outcome. I, it makes me wonder about like that 12 days and what they had to
Mhm.
endure of that alone too.
Well, and also, like in those 12 days, did they go back to the call center? Did they take other calls? Were there other
Yeah.
Hanoods that they talked to? Like, it's
Yeah.
just, and I think that's the beauty of this film is all those things leave you with so much to think about at the end of
Yeah.
the real life human cost, because this film is so honoring to these people and each character is so human. And so I think it's just all of those things that often feel like cheesy in based on a true story kind of films really work here. And I think because the entire film is so grounded, so then the little things at the end about what really happened to these people, they hit so much harder.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. To quote Andrew Corns himself from the Revisionist Almanac, like the beginning of the film started with the ending of the film. And that is so true. Like our experience starts actually when the film is ended, and then we have to sit with everything that has happened. Yeah. One of the other notable, very notable inclusions in kind of the arc of this film is in the third act. The team figures out they're kind of pressed. They don't know what to do. No one's responding. They're not getting the approval. And they choose to put the recordings on social media. And they have this whole discussion around like, but like, how do you think this is going to inspire empathy when there have been images of such like violence and horrific things already circulating on social media, and that has not been working? Like, what do you think it is about this girl's voice that's going to change anything? And it was such an interesting like commentary on like the state and fatigue of like our social media landscape right now and how we're so desensitized to the state of the world, but also this really beautiful nod to the power of the film because he asked the question like, why do you think a girl's voice is going to inspire empathy? And by this point, we're already like two-thirds of the way through, and this film has allowed us to experience the deepest form of empathy for this girl because of just her voice. So, and so the kind of the dramatic irony of we have experienced a thing that he says he believes is impossible is actually like a really beautiful nod to the power of the film too. um but yeah, I'm curious your thoughts about that whole sequence because it feels like commentary at a larger level beyond the film itself of like, hey, let's wake up to the state of how we share news today and how warped it is.
No, I think it was really well done because like it makes sense in the context of the film. It makes sense for these characters, um, and it is making the larger point of hello. I need
Yeah.
everybody to like wake up and understand what's going on. So I think it was just really really well done, really well timed, and honestly, an important conversation that needs to be had. Of I think that's what's so impressive to me about like a film like this is every character is so human and they have not lost their humanity.
Mm,
And then we look at something like social media and we see images of people who are starving in Gaza. We read
yeah.
headlines about people who are suffering in various places all over the world, and we just continue to scroll past. And so I think that there's probably something there, and like even an invitation for us who just can easily scroll past these things, easily ignore these stories, to examine our own humanity and
Mm,
maybe some of those pieces that we have lost, some of that empathy that we maybe have lost. And so I it's not like a big point in the film that's like really
mm.
like hitting you over the head, but I do think it's like a really beautiful invitation to kind of examine how we are responding to stories like this, and what we've maybe lost in the process.
Yeah, and it gives me maybe hopefulness too that like this medium that we love and adore with film is able to accomplish something that perhaps like the state of the media landscape right now needs most too, like to sit with one story for a 2 hour period versus kind of the bite-sized headlines and short videos and photos that we get. Like, yeah, like it is maybe more unnatural for us to be drinking from the fire hose of like small bite-sized pieces of content that allows us to become more and more numb versus taking the time and having the patience to sit with a 2 hour story and allow the empathy we have for this one story to percolate and multiply for the many stories, instead of hearing the many stories or hearing the statistics of many, but to just sit with one story and then allow that to naturally multiply as it does for us as humans to empathize. Like, I think, especially in the state of the world now, we know that empathy is like difficult, but that is actually like the most natural thing for us to do. And I think this film is a reminder of that as well, to see the way that every single one of the call center employees like cannot help but empathize and be sucked in and feel emotionally invested, because that is in our nature. It's in our nature to care and to invest in others and to want to root for them and to want to help. And in some ways, in a film that is so tragic and devastating, I think that is the shining light too, is like almost like restored my hope in humanity of like, yeah, this is our nature, is to be Omars of the world and just be like, how could we not? That is the natural response. And we got to see that fully on display in this film too.
Yeah, I kept thinking about Mr. Rogers while I was watching. That's my reference in my one sentence summary is when he said look for the helpers. And that is what I just kept thinking. These are just
Mm,
regular people living through unimaginable circumstances, and their response is to be a helper. And I think that that's
yeah.
just, it's so beautiful, and the film really beautifully captures that feeling, and captures their dedication and their heroism. Even when things don't work out, it's still worth the attempt. Like, being a helper is not always going to result in a success, but you
Mm,
still continue to do it anyway. And I think there's a beauty in that and a resilience in that, even though this film is incredibly tragic.
yeah. Yeah. And that like the power of a team of helpers is greater than the individual. Like I thought that was so notable too, is that we don't get just like one dude. We don't just get Omar on the phone with her and he is the one coordinating everything. It's not the individual hero that is doing this act of great deed. It's actually this team. And in fact, like they all have points where they break down and they fail and they cannot do it alone anymore. And someone else needs to like receive the baton to keep running with it. And that was also really healthy, I think, for us to see, which is in the places that you are investing in and pouring into and helping, like, good luck. You can't do it on your own. You need people to come alongside you and like carry you when you can't. I mean, Ron at one point literally collapses from the experience and needs to be physically helped up to carry on. So, yeah, the toll is too great for just the one individual to be the hero of the story, which is very American.
Right. Like, we have so many individualistic films where, Luke Skywalker is going to come in and save the day. Ethan Hunt, he's the only one that can save the entire world. So I love films like this that dispel that myth. Like, it's not just one person, but we
Yeah.
need each other. Like, we all have our role to play, and together we can help, or at least we can try. And so I think that that's, it's just so beautiful to see. I feel like we're getting more and more stories like that, but these are all just so precious when it's not just a single dude who's going to save the day. Those films are
Yeah.
fun, but like, man, can we get some non-individualistic films?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This film's like, you can't do it, but your team can. um, I suppose Marvel's gone in a better direction of like, it's the Avengers that will save the world and not
Mhm.
just Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So we're moving in a better direction. Okay, any other last big thoughts, things we want to call out, celebrate, mention with the voice of Hind Rajab?
I really also appreciated the emphasis on the technology that's used, and like
Oh yeah.
the intricacies of how they have to go about rescuing somebody. And I just like that the film takes us into this process. We can see them tracking somebody on the Google map, and now things have changed and that route is no longer accessible. So okay, we got to call somebody to get the new route, go on these street. Like, I loved being into the process, but then also understanding that there's additional dangers that come with that. Like, if the networks are down, then you can't direct your rescuers. So what are you going to
Yeah.
do? Like, I, I like that. Again, it's a tangible reminder that this is a very grounded story and things that actually have happened. Um, and just seeing how creatively they're using all of these pieces of technology at their disposal to try and do good for their communities and for their people. So I liked that. I like the process. I like to understand how things work, and the film really takes us into understanding those pieces, which I don't know, for me really worked, really helped ground it.
Yeah, it's so true. And um I feel like the difficulties of having to be so scrappy too, and um, like when the investment we feel at the end there, where like we're seeing the little truck icon like moving, 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 and then it's like, well, now we have no idea where the truck is. Like we have not a clue, um, and like how the lack of information is such a blocker for them to be able to help. So as well intentioned as they are, like the systems matter, which is important and significant. And also, like the handoffs and the approvals and all of that, like back behind the scenes, like bureaucracy that goes into crisis response, I think is also like this film shined a light on a little bit more. Because obviously, the question is like, why couldn't we have done more? Why couldn't we have saved more people? It's like the impossibility of having to organize a coordinated response to keep as many people safe as possible in these types of situations, working with the systems that are probably faulty is a technical challenge as well as it is being like a human challenge as well. And I thought that was like so helpful to see, like just like so like humbling to see, because um I've never been in crisis systems, but to see the challenges that are not just resourcing human problems, but just like truly technical asset problems is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very different than, like Liam Neeson in Taken of like, I'm just gonna solve this problem myself. Screw your systems. I'm gonna do it,
Yeah.
I
Or like
just
in a
I
Bond film where you've got like Q in a truck somewhere and it's like they are speaking clearly to each other of exactly where you need to go 10 feet to the left and that's where the lever is. Like,
yeah.
okay, it's not that's where we go for like fantasy.
Mhm. Which is fun. We have a
Yeah.
good time with James Bond films, but it's nice to see a more grounded and real version of people doing these truly selfless and heroic deeds.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, even though it's a very, very hard watch.
Yeah. Yeah. My last shout out that I wanted to give is just seeing the way that this team had to communicate with a child in a situation like this. And I think for so many people and families, like figuring out how to explain the difficulties of the world to children and kind of the creativity that needs to go into that, I think was on full display here. So there's so many moments where they'll ask, are they sleeping? Like, are the people around you sleeping? Like having to, how do they protect the child from um, like having to see the horrors too early when it's not like time for her yet, and protecting her from that, but also needing the information they need from her to know where she is, how much um like food does she have, where her location is, and then having to explain like complicated adult world concepts to her, like when they're explaining like we're on the way, but and I think it's Nisreen who says describe it like a family. So okay, our we have to ask for permission for our father, and our brothers that are going to help you have to ask permission from their father, and then our fathers have to talk to each other. And I was like, well, ain't that corporate bureaucracy explained to a T? But like, how do you explain these very complicated concepts to a 5 year old, a 6 year old, and just how you see the call center team having to rack their brain for that, um, while they're processing their emotions, while they're also having to be calm. And I just feel like maybe so many parents might be able to empathize with their impossible task that they have to do, which is find creativity reserves to explain these things to their kids, and for kids that are having to grow up too fast, but wanting them to still understand the dynamics. So I loved how much they were constantly having to like figure out how to like breathe in like you're smelling flour, breathe out like you're blowing a candle, like just to connect with her on her level, and not on adult world ways.
Yeah, yeah, and also even despite their best attempts, like she has grown up far earlier than she should,
Yeah.
after Rana is doing the whole like, oh, they're sleeping, like be quiet, don't wake them up, and eventually she's like, no, they're dead. Like the Hanud understands
What's
what's
going on?
going
Yeah.
on, and so I loved the adults care for the child, but also the way that the film is reminding us, like, yes, she's a kid, and she is going through this horrible situation that she's seen things that no kid should ever have to see or experience or feel. So
Yeah.
the way the film is able to like balance those two and have them
Mm,
like in conversation with each other, I thought was really well done.
yeah. And like it's a shock too to hear her say that on the phone too. And to have to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah. And everything we were saying earlier, I guess like you knew exactly what we were saying the whole time as well. Yeah. So good. Okay, any other last things? Did we hit most of the high points for gosh, this incredible film,
Yeah.
just so well executed and so gracefully done, so honoring,
Hmm.
while also not shying away from the depth of emotion for us.
Yeah, I think the only other shout out I want to give is that all of the actors in this are Palestinian. And I just, again,
Yes.
this film is so honoring, so respectful of this story.
Mm,
And I think the
love that.
that intentional choice to cast Palestinian actors, I think was really important, and just again speaks to the care that went into creating this film.
Yes, absolutely. I love that so much. Yeah, because like if they are going to represent this thing that is so near and dear to these people's hearts, like by do it right, and if not do it, don't do it at all. And the intention and all the filmmaking aspects to be so honoring and intentional. Yeah, so good. I love that shout out. Okay, well, this was our review and discussion of The Voice of Hind Rajab. Um, we adore this film, if you can't tell, and we think this is like essential viewing and important to watch. It's not going to be a pleasant watch. It's going to be a difficult watch, but like, who cares? It's art, and you're meant to be put in context and situations that are uncomfortable and deeply emotional, but like you will be changed for the better, and that is the most beautiful thing that we could all want for anyway. And just like a deeper understanding of kind of the realities at scale, at a global context, at a global level too. I think this is such an important film that is so well done and so caring for its subject matter, and that shines through so brightly in The Voice of Hind Rajab. So we can't recommend it enough. And just so grateful that the Oscars is recognizing this and driving eyeballs towards it. Like, we probably may never have watched this without this being one of the nominated Oscar films. So we're just so grateful for that. The Oscars using its powers for good. All right, well, stay tuned here on the feed soon. We'll have more film reviews and lots of goodness coming your way. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see y'all again very soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. We are part of the Movie Archer podcast network, so check out moviearcher.com to learn more.
Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating review, letting us know your thoughts about today's episode.
Connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us.
We hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see y'all very soon.